Welcome to This Week in Education. Right now, the ground is shifting under our feet. Across the country, states are dealing with a system that is under just immense pressure. We're seeing these deep, foundational crises emerge. But at the same time, we're also seeing some incredibly bold and, honestly, transformative responses. So let's break it all down.
All right, here's the path we're going to take. First, we have to follow the money. We'll look at the massive funding challenges that are cracking the system's foundation. Then, we'll see how all that leads to these intense accountability pressures, which in turn are forcing some really dramatic changes inside the classroom. And finally, we'll look ahead at some visionary strategies being built to prepare students for the future workforce.
So let's start with those foundational cracks, the ones appearing in school funding. And we're going to begin with what feels like a seismic shift over in Ohio.
Let's just start with this number, $3 billion. That is the staggering amount Ohio's public schools are short on constitutionally required funding. To put that in perspective, the legislature is providing less than 10% of what's actually needed. And this didn't just happen. It's the direct result of abandoning a bipartisan plan that was designed to fix a system the state's own Supreme Court had already declared unconstitutional not once, but 4 separate times.
And believe me, Ohio is not alone here. Over in Illinois, they're facing a really similar crisis. We're talking about a $2.3 billion gap that has now pushed its deadline for adequate school funding back 7 long years, all the way to 2034. Just think about that. It means right now, 3/4 of the state's students are sitting in underfunded schools. So, what is really going on here? Well, it's a fundamental shift in philosophy. We're moving away from an evidence-based model that asks a pretty simple, logical question. Hey, what does it actually cost to educate a child? And instead, we've got this thing called residual budgeting. That's where politicians basically pick a number they like, and then they create a formula to justify it. For schools trying to plan for the future, it's just chaos. And look, this isn't just some abstract accounting problem. It has a real human cost. Take one student in Vandalia, Illinois. By the time they reached 4th grade, they had already lost out on over $21,000 in state aid. This stuff impacts generations of students who will never, ever get those critical K-12 years back. Okay, so what happens when you starve a system of funds? Well, that pressure has to go somewhere, and more, it's landing right on the schools through these incredibly rigid accountability systems. This is creating a perfect storm, and ground zero for that storm right now is in districts like Austin, Texas. In Austin, the clock is absolutely ticking. 12 campuses have just received their 3rd consecutive failing grade. Now that automatically triggers mandatory state intervention, and the deadline they've been given is just brutal. They have only a few months to develop and submit these massive turnaround plans before the state steps in this January.
The state's message was blunt, basically saying, your approach isn't working. They're demanding immediate, drastic change. But, and this is the catch, this demand for a complete overhaul is happening while the district is simultaneously trying to plug a nearly $20 million budget hole. It's like they're being told to build a new ship while the old one is actively sinking.
And this right here, this chart just shows the absurdity of the system perfectly. Look at Dobie Middle School. They made a huge leap, improving their score by 13 points. But because they landed 1 single point short of some arbitrary cutoff number, they were still labeled a failure. The system couldn't see the incredible progress. It could only see the number. All these pressures are forcing states to make really dramatic changes, starting right inside the classroom itself. And we're seeing New York lead the way with 2 major high-impact interventions.
So first up, New York City is making a huge bet on an old idea: smaller class sizes. They are pouring a massive $182 million into a plan to shrink elementary classes down to 20 students and high school classes to 25. For anyone who knows what classrooms are like today, with 32 students or more, this is an absolute game changer.
But it's how they're doing it that's so interesting. This is not a one-size-fits-all mandate from on high. Instead, they are empowering individual schools to design their own solutions, whether that's hiring new teachers or creatively converting different spaces. It's a model that's built on trusting the educators on the ground to know what their students actually need.
At the very same time, the entire state is tackling digital distraction with a new bell-to-bell cell phone ban, and it has overwhelming public support. When you look at the research, it's pretty stark. The average teenager receives 250 notifications a day. Deep learning is almost impossible in that environment.
And early results from other states show this causes a dramatic cultural shift. When the phones disappear, human connection reappears. Students are actually making eye contact, having conversations, playing games at lunch. This isn't just about removing a distraction. It's about rebuilding the social and emotional foundations that are absolutely necessary for learning to even happen.
And this takes us to our final section, looking beyond these immediate crises to the long-term vision for education's role in the economy. It's a real pivot from just fixing problems to actively creating opportunity.
Over in Georgia, a $65 million initiative is bringing AI and robotics training to students all across the state. And the philosophy here is just so powerful. It's about framing technology as a tool for empowerment, giving students the skills to command the future, not just react to it.
Now, this fundamentally changes the conversation about what success after high school even looks like. These programs are creating direct pathways to high-paying careers in fields like AI and robotics, and they often skip the debt and time of a traditional four-year degree. We're talking about technicians who can start their careers earning $60,000 to $80,000 a year, right out of the gate.
North Carolina is doubling down on this model. They're expanding apprenticeships that provide paid, on-the-job training. And just look at the long-term impact. $400,000. That's the average additional amount a worker earns over their career after finishing one of these programs. That's not just a job, that's a life-changing investment.
So this is the core tension we're left with, right? What we've seen today is a system at a crossroads. It's caught between managing today's crises and trying to build tomorrow's opportunities. And so the fundamental question is this: do we spend all of our energy just patching the cracks in the old foundation, or do we have the vision and the courage to start building a new structure altogether?